What's up, folks? It's your buddy Fatalroadie. Tonight we're going to be doing the Raw recap. We started off this week, just like we do every time, with a recap of what happened last week, this time with Braun Strowman and Kane. And it wouldn't be a Raw without somebody coming out and cutting a promo. This week it's going to be Kurt Angle. And he said he's going to be deciding by the end of the night who will be facing Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble, Kane or Braun Strowman. So Braun Strowman comes out and he says that last week he was the last man standing between him and Kane. Then Kane comes out and he says he spent the past 20 years laying destruction throughout the WWE, and that if anybody's going to be facing Brock Lesnar, it's going to be him, because I think he said something along the lines of they've never met before. But I don't think that's correct, because I think they met on an episode of SmackDown way back. So then Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar come out. Brock Lesnar gets into the ring. Kurt Angle says that he's made a decision that it's going to be a triple threat match between Brock Lesnar, Kane, and Braun Strowman, and immediately bolts out of the ring. Almost immediately, Strowman, Kane, and Lesnar start fighting. Brock Lesnar clotheslines Braun Strowman out of the ring. Kane tries to go for a choke slam, but Brock Lesnar fights out of it and gives Kane an F5. I made a comment on Twitter that I'm pretty sure Kane was added to this match just to eat the pin, to keep Strowman and Lesnar looking strong. We then come to our first match, which is supposed to be Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe. Seth Rollins comes out, and then Jason Jordan's music hits. When he comes out, the crowd is booing him rather loudly. He gets in the ring and tells Seth Rollins that he wants Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe comes out and says, well, why don't you two fight for it, and whoever's left, I'll take care of. So then that match is set up, Seth Rollins versus Jason Jordan. Jordan starts off dominating Seth Rollins through most of this match. Rollins tries to rally back, but Jason Jordan keeps driving him into the corner, which seems to be the only move that Jason Jordan knows how to do, besides a suplex. Jordan tries multiple times trying to pin Seth Rollins, but is only able to get a 2 count out of it. Seth Rollins was able to get some offense in, knocking Jason Jordan down, going for the pin, getting a 2 count. Rollins then knocks Jason Jordan out of the ring, hits him with a suicide dive, knocking them both out of commission for a while. The referee starts to count. They both get in just as it hits 9. Jason Jordan hits Seth Rollins with 2 Northern Light suplexes, goes for the pin on the second one, and gets a 2 count. Later on, they start fighting at the top rope. Seth Rollins knocks Jason Jordan down, gives him a frog splash, and it gets a 2 count. The fight then goes outside of the ring, where Seth Rollins gets into Samoa Joe's face, and then Seth Rollins throws Jason Jordan into Samoa Joe, and then gives Joe a super kick. Seth Rollins gets Jason Jordan back into the ring, hits him with the knee, and gets the pin. After the match, Samoa Joe gets into the ring and starts attacking Seth Rollins. As Samoa Joe is being escorted away from the ring, he levels Jason Jordan with a clothesline. I really hate to say it, but I've been falling out of favor for Jason Jordan and this whole Kurt, I am your son shtick that's going on. They need to move on from this and start making some decent matches out from everything else. We then have a video package with Flashy and Wyatt. They really need to start putting subtitles under Bray Wyatt, because it's really hard to understand what he says half the time. We then have a handicap match, Finn Balor versus Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. Why? Didn't we see these three the past couple of weeks facing each other? Long story short, Dallas and Axel get themselves DQ'd attacking Finn Balor, which brings up the debut of Hideo Itami, who comes in and saves Finn Balor. After the break, we find out that we now have a tag match, Finn Balor and Hideo Itami versus Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. Dallas and Axel take their turns working over Finn Balor. After a while, Finn Balor finally gets Hideo Itami tagged in, and he proceeds to beat down Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas. He gives Curtis Axel the go to sleep and gets the pin. These two matches of themselves were kind of lackluster. It was interesting to see the debut of Hideo Itami. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what he brings to 205 Live, and potentially if he's going to be doing anything on the main card. We then have Cedric Alexander versus Drew Gulak for the #1 contender for the Cruiserweight title. Enzo Amore was at the announcer's table. This match probably would have been better sounding if it was placed on mute, because we wouldn't have to listen to Enzo talk. But to the match, it was pretty decent. There was quite a bit of flippy shit. Like I said, I always like flippy shit. Drew Gulak took the offense, working on Cedric Alexander's back. At one point, I don't know exactly what strike did it, but Drew Gulak got busted open pretty bad. He was bleeding quite a bit from the mouth. Either the mouth or the nose, I'm not sure, but he was bleeding. It was coming down pretty good. Cedric Alexander gets the lumbar check for the pin, and is now the #1 contender. Will be facing Enzo Amore for the Cruiserweight title. We then have Asuka versus Alicia Fox. We'll make this one short. If you saw the last couple times they've met, you saw this match. Asuka put Alicia Fox into the Asuka lock for the submission. Asuka won. We then have Samoa Joe and The Bar versus Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Jason Jordan. The Bar and Samoa Joe take turns working over Jason Jordan, who took it upon himself to tag himself in at the beginning of the match. Seth Rollins tags in, starts beating up on Cesaro, tries to pin, gets a 2 count. After the break, Sheamus is in the ring. He's beating up on Seth Rollins. Then Samoa Joe tags in and tries to go for a pin, gets a 2 count. After a huge brawl with everybody involved, Seth Rollins gets into the ring, catches a brogue kick from Sheamus, and Cesaro gets the pin. It's later reported that Dean Ambrose apparently messed up his arm somewhere in all this. I'm not that sure if this is kayfabe or if this is storyline where we're going with that, but alright. We then have Heath Slater and Rhino versus the Revival. The Revival have been out for the past couple months due to injuries on both Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder. I think one of them had a broken jaw and the other one tore their bicep. I'm not exactly sure which one did what, but they were both out of commission. As soon as one got healed up, the other one got injured. So they were out for a while, but they're back. Now they're facing Heath Slater and Rhino. This is basically just a glorified squash match. Heath Slater ate the Shatter Machine and the Revival get the pin. It's really cool to see the Revival back in action again. Hopefully we can get them into the tag team hunt. That way we don't have to see Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose versus Sheamus and Cesaro for the 5,287th time. We then have Elias eating up time, trying to sing a song. He's interrupted by the women coming into the 6-woman tag match. Sasha Banks, Mickie James, then Bayley. After that he leaves. They'll be facing Paige, Sonya Deville, and Mandy Rose of Absolution. The women of Absolution take turns tagging in to beat up Sasha Banks. Paige tags in, tries to go for the pin, gets a 2 count. Rose and Deville run around the ring and take out Mickie James and Bayley. They come into the ring and start to beat up Sasha Banks with Paige and get disqualified. Shortly after, Nia Jax comes walking into the ring and starts a fight with Absolution, throwing Rose and Deville around like ragdolls into the corner and then sets them up for a double Samoa drop. Paige then attacks Nia Jax from behind, and then the Raw Women's locker room comes out and starts a big brawl. And then Stephanie McMahon comes out. This is probably going to be the first time in a long while we haven't seen Stephanie McMahon emasculating somebody. But she comes in and cuts a promo about the women's revolution and about the match of Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss over in the Middle East for the women's title being a first in WWE history. And that at the Royal Rumble, there'll be another moment in history where there'll be an all-women's Royal Rumble Battle Royal match. So this will be very interesting to see what's going to be happening. If it's going to be just the Raw Women's Battle Royal match, if they're going to be like separate for Raw and SmackDown, or if we're going to have both women's divisions in one match. I'm not exactly sure there's enough women on either side to facilitate 2 matches for Raw and SmackDown. So I think they may just do one whole match with both women from Raw and SmackDown. But like I said, that's going to be very interesting to see. With that announcement, Raw went off the air with the crowd chanting yes. My take on tonight's Raw, it was very below average. I wasn't really too impressed. The only real high points that I could see in this episode of Raw was Hideo Itami's debut, the return of the Revival, and the announcement of the Women's Royal Rumble match. Other than that, most of the matches were kind of, there wasn't really much excitement in most of them. But I'll do it for the Raw recap. I'll be back tomorrow for the SmackDown review. Leave a comment down below if you saw tonight's SmackDown, what you thought about it, what you thought of this video. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to share and subscribe. I've been Fatalroadie. You've been awesome. Thank you very much for watching. And remember, if it's too loud, you're too old. See ya.